Hey everyone, my name is Eric. I'm here with Toby, and today we're gonna do a bit of a video about the concept of forward failure, specifically, how it works in games. There's actually this notion in games that's sort of at the core of how lots of modern, especially difficult games work, which is this idea of Git Good, right? You'll hear it come from typically veterans of the Soulsborne genre, which is notorious for its difficulty. It's this thing where someone comes up, they don't know much about the game, and they're trying to, they're trying to figure out how it works, and they'll ask for help. They'll come up and say, okay, how do I beat this? And the typical response, which started out as sort of a heckle from the veterans, was just get good, let's figure it out. And what's interesting is culturally it's shifted from this heckle to sort of a war cry, right? People now want to get good, and once you've gotten to this status where you actually understand the game, you understand the difficulty, you've gotten past the obstacle, you can say I got good.
It's almost
And
like Eric. It's almost like that concept we talked about before, where you've gone from a white belt, you've gone from a
yeah,
noob, as they describe it,
mhm,
to a black belt.
yeah.
But in order to do that, you've had to, you know, you've really had to unlock a learning process to go through that.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, and there's probably some amount of suffering and getting past difficulty, pain, and maybe even tears, right?
Well,
It's that notion.
there are some videos out there of people doing Dark Souls where they've almost thrown the controller through through their
Oh
screen.
yeah.
And for those that don't know
Yeah.
it, I mean, it's not that Dark Souls is difficult. It is. It's just that your skills are less than what's required in game. So you've got to bring your skills up to it like that.
The game doesn't basically it's known for not holding your hand. It starts hard and it stays hard all the way through. Whereas, typically entertainment, right, is often designed to be easy and comfortable and sort of you just relax and you're taking through something. You might learn a bit, but mostly, you're just there for the experience. And these are games that are designed to just be difficult. And you have to get the skills, train, and face obstacles again and again and again to unlock that part of your brain and your physical skill set with the controller or your keyboard or whatever to sort of get past the obstacle and solve it. And that's get good, right? That's the mentality behind it.
But would you
I,
not think that it's gone from being a niche? When Dark Souls first came out, I was trying to think of what the first name was. It the
you're thinking of Demon Souls.
yeah. I mean, people said it would never survive. People
Yeah,
said that this type of genre, where the difficulty is at this level, it will die because really you've got to cater to the lowest common denominator.
yeah.
You don't want to make it too hard because people. So it really challenged the game, the notion of game design and difficulty, and leveling up within games across the board
Yep.
because it's now well, it's grown. This type of genre, Soulsborne, has grown across the board as people loved it because they had to develop their skills, and that when they did develop the skills, well, it made them feel special. They became part of a special community, well, a worldwide community of those that are that have beaten the game. You know, so I think.
And
Go on. Go on.
good. Well,
No,
I
no.
think one of the interesting things is that it's to the point where most action games that come out these days, if they don't have at least some of that element of difficulty in getting past something, game critics will tend to find them boring and sort of call that out. It's become an expectation as a sort of a standard practice. You have to have that process of learning through difficulty and achieving mastering skills to get past stuff.
I think there's another thing that's taken place as well is that there's this, and it's looking at the concept of innovation. the concept of creative thinking, when, for example, Lords of the Fallen came out, which is a Souls-like game, it was accused of just copying Dark Souls mentality, and it was criticized everywhere. Now, that way of approaching, because Lords of the Fallen has morphed into a couple other games, trying to remember Surge 1 and Surge 2, which are really great games, and now a new Lords of the Fallen coming out this year, as I understand, but still maintaining the purity behind the idea of difficulty as a game mechanic and as a teaching mechanic. And actually, to come back to it, so difficulty is a form of entertainment. Because what you now see, what you now see is that difficulty has become a sport, an e-sport that people want to watch, because it's so impressive to see people master this. I'm going to have a drink.
I mean, on that subject, I was watching a video just yesterday from a great YouTube channel called People Make Games, where they actually looked into competitive Excel spreadsheets.
No way.
Okay. Yeah. And when you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. At a high level, Excel is a really, really difficult task tool. You can get into some things that are really complex. Well, what happened? Someone came up and said, well, let's make a competition out of this. This is amazing. This is fun. There's difficulty. There's mastering something. There's getting past an obstacle. So let's do it. So I think there's a whole, a massive part of our culture, which is the thing that drives competitive sports, right? That's driven towards this achievement system, achieving goals and performing. And that's really coming into play with this notion of getting good and getting past your skills barrier.
But I think that's an important point, that we see this within the video games world. And it's very hard for people who are not familiar with video games to realize that video games is bigger than Hollywood. It's enormous. And it's not just that it's achieved a market size now that's comparable and bigger, but that it's evolving. As technology evolves, as ability to tell stories, we now see with The Last of Us, this incredible narrative in the video games becomes this incredible series that on Prime that everybody's watching and is blown away by it. But I heard somebody tell me they prefer the stories in game; they're better than they are on the in the actual video, and we're seeing something happening here. What we're not seeing, I think, right, is that the notions of Git Good permeating the corporate training sphere. Still, I think in the corporate training sphere that forward failure, as much as it may be spoken of in some circles, is still an anathema. It's still a heretical principle, primarily because senior executives don't live this.
And to the point where we've had people enter, a training session, and when they were faced with difficulty, they would immediately say, this is not training. It's too hard. I'm not going to be able to learn. Right? There's this notion that if you're doing something, if you're trying to beat something, if you're trying to get past an obstacle, well, that's not training. That's real life. Well, reality is,
Yeah, but there's that
same thing.
Do you remember when we're in the training session and somebody piped up in the back of the training session and said, "Is this training?" It's like, "Is this actual training?" And we went, "Yeah." He said, "But the training that I go on, you're not supposed to work." I remember sitting there with all the CinQ team going, "Did he really just say that? Did we not video that? Did we not?" I mean, training. So there's this thing in corporate training where it can't be too difficult. It has to be tailored to the lowest common denominator. It has to be a
cannot upset people, right?
Yeah.
You can't upset this sort of comfort that people are settled in.
Yeah. Trust me, you're going to play Dark Souls or Dark Souls game. You're going to step out your comfort zone, And those streamers who I have a lot of respect for, who stream live from the beginning of a game, like, one of my heroes is Fighting Cowboy, stream live from a game they never played. They go on and they stream and they play and they fail. And they don't
Yeah.
just fail like, mine failed, sorry guys, whatever. They fail dramatically and they live with it because they explain to you that forward failure means that happened to me. Did I learn from it? This is the essence of forward failure. Not that you fail 100 times, but you never learn from it. I mean, that's a negative error, that if you don't actually
No,
learn
for
from it.
sure.
Do you know what I mean? So you don't adapt.
That's almost always going to be the result of some sort of stubbornness and unwillingness to adapt, where you just get stuck because you're not trying to learn. You're just trying to apply a model that you're already
But
comfortable with.
do you know? Yeah, but do you remember the story? Neo is is yeah, do you remember? So Neo came out, and it's a Dark Souls like game, but it's
Yep.
it's based on Japanese culture, and we love it within our team. And I in particular prefer it much to Eric's disgust to the Dark Souls games, primarily because it's for me. I like the Japanese culture. But there was this one dude, right, who actually, I don't know, it appeared on video, it was on Reddit or something. He'd written in the forum, because he's still buying the DVDs in those days. He said, I've sent it back to the headquarters in Japan, and I've asked my money back, or can they send me a debutante version, a beginner's version? I mean, you have no idea the mirth and laughter that caused. That's the same sort of attitude that we've had when we present CinQ, our own multiplayer video game, which is heavily influenced by Dark Souls-like difficulty. Our game is not easy to play. You have to ramp up your skills. We had one experience. It's interesting. We were in a meeting this morning where one of our coaches who'd introduced this client actually brought that up, where we worked with the board of directors.
Yep.
And they actually rejected continuing with us as coaches because it was too difficult. And that's another one I wish we'd recorded, right? This whole group of they said it's too difficult for them to learn communication skills, to learn collaboration, etc. Now I can hear some people saying, but they may have a point. Maybe it is too difficult because there's a gravitational force takes place within business corporate training, which is this immediate reduction of conflict and difficult so that it's easy to do, which you could never imagine in the sports world. You just couldn't imagine in the sports world. And in the same way, that war cry that's come into the games world of Git Good is something that I think that needs to be adopted within business training. Why does it need to be? Why does it need to be adopted? Well, because the environment that we're working in, right? To use all the overused phrases of highly complex, fast-moving, at speed, permacrisis, and you better adopt and work within a multi-team strategy, developing soft skills, power skills, emotional intelligence. Otherwise, you're just going to get caught napping when the scientific and technological disruptions are coming. It's not like they're coming in the future; they're like here now. I mean, I still know people that haven't used Chat GPT yet, which is to me.
And you're being generous because there are people who can barely use
Yeah,
Word, who can barely send an email.
Yeah. Okay, I'm being nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've had to do with a few, and it was kind of surprising the first time that happened.
Yeah. I suppose that seems, it's like, truth to power, but power not being just at the top, but truth to the people who we've worked with, etc. There's a bit of an emperor's got no clothes syndrome that happens with us because when you play CinQ, right? Well, you're part of a team and you've got nowhere else to go. You can't hide. We had one business consultant leader who actually used to describe playing Salk as a way of discovering your true self, because you can't hide. You are who you are in the real world, in the game, because it's more an augmented reality of what's
Yep.
taking place than it is the.
Sort of a side note, but I actually have a fun anecdote that comes to mind. You can try to hide. You try to hide, but you're gonna get caught. I remember not too long ago we were training a team, and one of the team members, I think it was the acrobat, just disappeared,
Yeah.
left, stopped interacting with the whole team for like. And as a coach, I saw that happening. Okay, I saw that the guy was gone. I didn't say a thing. Something like 40 minutes later, I asked the team members, well, what happened? Where'd he go? They were like, what? He was gone? And the reality is they were unable to progress further, and they were having serious issues because someone was missing. And their inability to realize that was an incredibly powerful learning moment for them.
Yeah.
So there's that thing where you will not achieve the goals the game asks of you if you're not able to really go straight in and just do it, get it done, and
Yeah.
focus on getting the objective done, right?
I
As a
suppose
team.
I think this leads us into the subject where, to help teams understand where they are and where they need to be. Now, in tech skills, which is really common out there in way people planning, there's common charts and ways of examining the tech skills and way of mapping the competencies that are needed within a business for that. Here, we're taking a novel approach to soft skills. So I think one of the things when we talk about soft skills is that we talk about emotional intelligence, but we're talking about emotional intelligence as a real foundation for teamwork performance. It's that radar-like telepathic skill that a team has to be able to perform, that sometimes is, a lot of it could be non-verbally because they're already in a rhythm, a resonance with each other. The expertise is hive-like, hive mind-like in the way they do that. And these two things, when we talk about skilled awareness and self-control, are absolutely bound together by empathy and social skills. These two components go on there. And this is when we talk about soft skills. So when we start to talk about what we do, when we go to our scorecard, what we're talking about here, Eric, if you can just drop yourself out of the picture there, when we're talking about this here, we're talking about 4 key components that we measure with the players. It's not that we are hierarchically the experts and we're going to tell you what to do. No, the ownership of this scorecard has to come from the participants. Otherwise, no learning takes place. All that happens is we tell you stuff, and that's not what we're talking about. Typically, when we do a scorecard and we're approaching it from a consultancy point of view to get the team to be really great, to achieve high performance levels, is before we introduce this, we ask the team what are the top 4 skills that you're going to need, or the top 5 skills that you're going to need to be able to conquer CinQ as a team. And we use this as a template for the teams later on in that process. We're going to show you a bit of what we do as a process on the second slide here. But before we get to that process, is to understand that there are 4 top skills that you're looking at within teamwork. And the first one is, why are we here and what are we doing? And we don't just mean that as, a corporate goal that aligns everybody in the right direction, that we make X, Y, Z widgets and we sell that. Here we're talking about missions and goals that move you from A to B within a project. We're talking about key milestones. A milestone is a goal, and how do you know it's a goal? And more importantly, as people discover when they play the game, does everybody share the goal? Do you actually have shared goals and shared missions? Because we quite often find that nobody's actually communicated to each other what they actually think, or they think implicitly that everybody automatically understands.
And one
So
of the things that comes in also is when people have, for various reasons, separate goals, which can happen, right? You have two tasks to accomplish at the same time. You have separate goals. Understanding the other people's goals is a key aspect of teamwork. So it's not just about the team's goals; it's also about understanding all the sub goals that comprise that general, overall goal, where when everything comes together.
no, you're banging right, Eric, in terms of that, and we see that so often. No, I mean, how is it that we've created a multiplayer game, all right, that with the Dark Souls ability that can actually reflect and mirror so many of the behaviors required to perform? Because that's what this is. The game itself, the game workflow, your ability to solve the problems or not solve the problems identifies your skills gap. And what happens is your ability to solve the first problem in the game, which is drones, second problem is you can map it on this scorecard. So does everybody understand the mission and goal? Does everybody collaborate together? I mean, in the example that Eric was talking about earlier, where they didn't even know that one of the players had disappeared, means there's a fundamental flaw in the concept of collaboration. Then the third aspect is evaluation and problem solving. But we don't mean evaluation and problem solving in terms of the IQ sense of this. We're talking about there's a task that lies ahead, and the only way you're going to solve it is through communication, a shared understanding, shared information, focused on actions that come together as part of your team to solve the problem ahead. If you don't function like that, then you're not gonna beat the challenges. And within the CinQ simulation, it starts off giving low-level challenges, difficult, yes, because you're not an organized team, and it ramps up as you go through the game. It scales up as you go through the game. So the last, but probably the most important aspect of all of the four skills is your ability to execute. And execute doesn't mean to execute brilliantly a fantastic plan. It actually means to get out the van and to iteratively test potential hypothesis that you've created that allows you to move forward and solve problems. Most people, yeah, go for it.
This brings to mind this example we have where there were teams of coaches, high level coaches, people who really knew their thing, right? Who were faced with CinQ and started planning their mission. So they were inside the van trying to figure out what they were going to do. And what was it? Something like 4 hours in, they still hadn't exited the van. They were creating spreadsheets and sharing everything, writing down every single element of every document and map and everything. They were just not going out, not doing anything, right?
Well, no, they did send one person out. Do you remember? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
The one person went to test the theory and come back, for a team game. Wow,
Yeah.
And
what's fascinating was their reaction once they finally we basically after a while we had to push them out, right? And their reaction when they finally got confronted with the actual challenges and all their planning, not all of it, but a good part of their planning just completely died because they didn't know what the game was like. They had no feel for what they were actually going to have to do.
Yeah, but it's that, isn't that thing? Was it? I can't remember the quote. Isn't it like when a plan meets reality, it fails. It needs to adapt. And in many ways, recognizing that your plan is just an iterative position. That needs to suddenly adapt when you've got new information or a new understanding of what's going on.
So intuitively, my understanding of this execution and performance has always been about, being willing to go forward and test things and being able to tie them back into all the other phases, all the other skills. It's just this sort of, we were talking about Git Good. Git Good is, in essence, about executing stuff. It's about just doing it until
But do
you
you
learn,
remember?
right?
So most people, but we've actually done this with esports teams as well, esport
Yeah.
coaches and esport teams. And one of the characteristics of those that get good in playing, particularly RPG games or even multiplayer games as well, is that they literally know that their way to understand and get through the game is to get out and try it, fail, get out and try and fail. Only minor problem in our game is you need to get out and try and fail as a group. As a team, where we had esport characters going out and try and fail, but as an individual, right, with no reporting back, etc. So it's not that just because you're good at playing games that you're going to be good at CinQ, because you're not. You're either you have the soft skills and the collaboration skills and the thinking skills and the goal skills to work together, or you don't. And I suppose you can go to the next slide, Eric.
Yeah.
Because, and I'm going to take myself out of here, is that I'm not going to go into a lot of detail this, but it's just to give you the flavor and the idea that when we talk about building a scorecard, and you can, for clients, for participants that use CinQ and who we work with, you can either use the pro forma scorecard that we work with, and it works very well, or there may come a time where you want to emphasize certain aspects of teamwork training, and you can change the scorecard. What we go through typically as part of one of our 5 programs, particularly 4 of the main programs that you can see on our website, that focus on team dynamics all the way through up to multi-team strategy, is that the first part that we focus on is the brainstorming. And you can see that in the bottom right. So it's identifying what are the top skills that are necessary to conquer the game. And, it's a bit deceitful to say conquer the game, because in many ways it's about how can you function as a team. And then what we do is we take the brainstorming, and you have to use the classical brainstorming rules that you don't filter what people are saying, you capture everything, and then you go through a process of filtering and categorization into groups. And that's the second one, where you can see categories, and you organizing them into there. And you can see that on our pro forma template that we've broken it into four categories. Here now, if you go back to the previous scorecard, Eric, for me. So here you can see that we've broken it down so that there are 5 columns that move from left to right. The first column is what we would call be level 1, and the 5th column is what we call level 5. But primarily what we're focused on here is that there's no evidence of this behavior. It's not that it doesn't exist. It's not that you haven't thought of it, but that for the coaches and for the other players and for the participants, there's no evidence that there was missions and goals. There was no evidence that people collaborating or problem solving or execution. Sorry, Eric.
I think one of the interesting things about what you're describing right there is that people can absolutely have one of the relevant skills and be pretty performant at it. It's just that in this specific context, with this specific team, they will, for one reason or another, not have put it into play, right? They'll have basically ignored it, not applied it. And that is where, the no evidence comes in. You just can't see it. If it's not being used, it's as if it didn't exist for the sake of this specific situation.
Well, what we're trying to do is it's a behavioral thing. So what we're trying to do is say is there evidence of this? All right. So that the evidence, if there isn't evidence, well, what does evidence look like? Well, it says, well, this is the goal, and that everybody agrees it, right? And you can see it and you can hear it, and it's either written down, So if we keep us both here and we go back to the last slide, what we're talking about here is you can see there's a process. And the process goes up to then definitions and status and deployment. And results, when we go back to the last slide, Eric, it results in creating something like this. Now you can either take the pro forma or you can take the template like this. We recommend you take the template in the beginning, you get used to it, you get a habitude in French to working with this, and then you'll bend it and shape it to your own needs. So I think one of the things that what we'd like to do is to summarize is this concept that exists within the video game world and competitive video gaming that talks about Git Good. And we think that this is a principle that we would like to share with all our colleagues in corporate learning and development, and say it's something to adopt. It's not, you don't have to fully adopt it, and you certainly don't have to adopt the language, but certainly understanding the principles behind mastering difficulty and using difficulty accompanied with forward failure to drive performance.
And I guess in that sort of vein, the scorecard and the whole way we deploy this is just a way, it's a tool to get participants to take part in that Git Good experience, right? It's a tool to push them in the right direction delicately as they go through the experience.
I think it pushes them because it gives them a mirror, and then what you're saying, we then give it to them so that they then own it. So there's a point when we're giving it, and then we let go, all right, and that they own that, and they keep wanting to ask us to tell them how they're doing, and we say, well, what do you think? Where's the evidence for what you did? So that they own the learning journey that they're going through, that the team starts to feel empowered, that not only does it's got the empowerment to make decisions, but it's empowered to learn without us being, overly directive within that process. Okay, I would like to say thank you very much, Eric. And if you guys appreciated what we did, we would really like it if you press the like and subscribe as always.
Yeah.
And we'll catch you on the next one.
Ciao.